pain and sorrow. Some people in their life have got lesser pain and sorrow, and some people have more pain and sorrow. So are these pain and sorrow preordained? Fatal? Is this by fate, or do you invite it?
This question of pain and sorrow being less or more, it's quite a relative question, because what appears to us to be not very painful may be for some people very painful. So it all depends upon the person's life, his mental makeup, his maturity at the time when the sorrow approaches him. That decides how serious this sorrow or pain is. Whether it is preordained, well, that this world has pain and sorrow is preordained. Not for one particular person, but it is in the nature of things that this life, there is always some sorrow and pain. There is no uniform happiness ever happening if our happiness is based on the outer world. Suppose our happiness is based on an inner understanding. That happiness cannot be shaken by any sorrow or pain that comes from the outside world. I am saying this because there is no way in which we can stop pain and sorrow of the outside world from touching us. There is no way. We can try our best. In fact, whole of our life, what we lead from morning till evening, is an attempt to keep sorrow at bay and encourage happiness. This is our life. When we say we are living, which means we are looking for happiness. We are not looking for sorrow. But it is inevitable. When you are looking for happiness, sorrow always follows around somewhere with us. You can see this in life. I don't have to explain it to you. If I want to improve in my career, I do so many things by which I expand. But in the process, I kick so many people on their toes, sometimes unknowingly also. And that creates automatically reaction and sorrow. No? So this is there. But the fact is that it is with us. We need not deny it. It is with us all the time. Just as we need not also deny the happiness that is with us. But that happiness which is in us becomes closer to us when we look inward than when we look outward. And once we look inward and touch it, then outward circumstances, nothing can move us. Nothing can create any sorrow for us. So it's a question of our inner being rather than outward circumstances. Understand what I am trying to say? Which also again I must add, I am not saying that we should deliberately encourage sorrow. This is not what I am saying. We need not deliberately torture ourselves by encouraging sorrow. This is not the meaning of what I am saying. I am only saying that it is inevitable. When it comes, you have to accept that it is there. Try ways and means to be away from it. If you move out of it, some other thing will come after some time. Finally, we all know that death comes. Right? Even if we do everything and feel that I possess all these things, I am the Lord of all that I survey, I go off, then who is surveying? So, understanding this, if we lead a life, then we will function within certain limits which are self-imposed and not kick on other people's toes or create problems. The search for happiness is a thing that goes on from birth to death in every human being. Kabir Das said that it is like the Kasturi Mriga that is looking for this smell that, there is a particular Mriga called the Kasturi Mriga, the deer, which is found mainly in the Himalayan regions. Most of them have been eliminated due to human greed, but there are still some. they have a small bag near the tail which exudes kasturi, musk deer. They are called musk deer. So in the season when the beautiful perfume comes into the air, the deer goes around looking for the source of the perfume everywhere, thinking that it must be coming from that bush, this bush, when it's actually coming from under the porch, under his tail. Now the human life is actually a search for that happiness which is overflowing inside us, and we are looking for it outside, thinking that it is somewhere. In that search, one encounters many sorrows, many disappointments. Once you turn within and understand that it is right here, then slowly the mind becomes stabilized. It doesn't happen in a day or two. It takes time, and each individual has his own time, and there are no shortcuts. But once you are grounded, then even ordinary life becomes very joyful. Then you begin to appreciate the flowers, the grass which grows under your window, which you haven't seen for ages maybe. Or you begin to enjoy the smiles on the little children's faces who are around. Or like this dog which came and sat here and enjoyed itself. Now when I came, it looked at me and said, this fellow has come, and went on. Nobody knows where he came from. Now, these are all wonderful things. They are not dependent on our money or acquiring the dog or anything of that kind, you see. So to live in freedom is to understand this and be happy, and give as much as possible without expecting anything in return. It's a great medicine for sorrow. It really cures you of sorrow.
Sometimes in the very hectic mundane hours, in the midst of traveling, in the busy day, when least thought of, the Sadguru's presence is felt by way of feeling overwhelmed, tears flowing from the eyes, the joy of enjoying every little thing, and a feeling of compassion. It's an upsurge. It is not asked for at all. Unasked for it comes, and it goes off on its own. And at other times, in spite of pining for this kind of a feeling, beseeching to the Sadguru that I want your presence to be felt again, it never comes. Does that mean I am invited the displeasure of my Guru? And how do I live longer and longer in the presence of my Guru?
Now we have to make a little distinction between my Guru, your Guru, and all these things. So from my point of view, Sadguru is God Himself. There is no other Sadguru except the Supreme Being. Now the Supreme Being manifests Himself in different ways, through different beings, through different people. And blessings are not something which we can dictate and say at this particular time I want this blessing. Nobody can do that. What all we can do is to leave the windows open. All our sadhana, all our actions, whatever we do in this life, if we are spiritually on the spiritual journey, is the act of cleaning up the house, opening the windows, taking out the cobwebs. Then we cannot dictate when the breeze is going to blow. The breeze is going to blow, of course. The wonderful breeze is going to come, the breeze of grace, and it strikes at unexpected times. Anything that you invite deliberately is colored by our thoughts and our invitations. That which comes unasked for is purely that, without any involvement of myself. But if I don't leave the windows open, the breeze may blow and go off and I won't feel it. So my job should be only to keep that and very patiently wait for it. We cannot dictate on it. If you go to Shirdi, you will find two things written there. One is Shraddha, the other is Saburi. Saburi meaning, you know what it means. Patience. You have to wait with patience for it to happen, until a stage comes when I am so pure and clear and not unselfish I am not even a wee bit self-centered, then it becomes permanent. Till then, we can only wait for it to come and pray. That one feels it even sometimes is a great thing. There are people who never feel it. We must be happy that at some point I feel this happiness coming into me, unasked for. It's a great blessing.
Like how a person is to choose among the various disciplines, what is like, he said it is, when I say it will be subjective to me, but still what is the logic behind choosing the right path which is fit for you? Because there are many
I agree. Now this is a very big question actually. It's not a small question. It's a very large question. I know it's asked with a great sincerity and all that, but it's a larger question which needs many days of discussion to really sort out. But since we are here and you have asked the question, there are many paths, as many paths to the spiritual goal as there are human beings. As many number of in the Hindu system of thought and culture, there are 33 crores of gods. So there must be 33 crores of ways to reach this. The problem begins when I say this is the only right path. There is no other way. Then the problem begins. Otherwise there is no problem. Okay. But even then we are generally befuddled because we don't know which path to approach, how to go. Practice first of all when the sincerity of the search begins. When I say this is the most important thing on my priority list, other things are not so important. When that begins, then slowly our choices also narrow down. Because what may be a beautiful approach for you may not be the same for somebody else. We are all made in different ways. Common traits are there, of course, in the human being, but in general, we are all made with different backgrounds we come from, different past births, different images, different past experiences in this life, different parentage, exposed to so many different, so there are so many ways that we have made up. So therefore it's natural that one path may not be suitable for you. You know, it may be some other. Let him be. Why is everybody driving that dog away? So so there are different approaches. So how do we go about it? First, I must be sure that I am seriously looking for a spiritual fulfillment. Point number one. Then keep myself exposed to all that I can see at the moment around me and see if it suits my way of life. Some teachings may be wonderful, but they may not be suitable to you. That doesn't mean they are bad teaching. They may not be your cup of tea. So you have to keep. And as your sincerity grows and you become more and more, till then you start practicing simple things like sitting down quietly. This everybody can do. There is no need to be initiated or anything of the kind. But if you see a beautiful sunset, sit down and close your eyes. First open your eyes and see it, then close your eyes and enjoy it. Or you go to the mountains and enjoy, get away from the city for some time. You know, all these things take us. As you continue with that, a time will come when you will also start disciplining your life, saying that I am wasting too much time on unnecessary things, so let me stop it. This will start falling into place one by one. Sincerity is important. Okay. And then when you come to a stage when you say, now it is impossible, I must find some guide. I feel as if I am placed in a position where I can't live long without. Then, believe me, a teacher will come to you. It is my experience. Personally, it's my experience that at the age of 9, that Babaji should come all the way from somewhere. When I say Babaji, I mean Maheshwarnath Babaji, my Guru person, and pick me up like this. And I attribute it to my dying to find somebody, longing to find somebody. So when that longing becomes strong, it will come. Now, till then, there are various guidelines available to us, especially in this country. We have the great texts like the Bhagavad Gita, which has 18 chapters. 18 chapters, and each chapter is an approach to the truth. It begins with the first chapter, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the yoga of Arjuna's dissatisfaction. This is where we are now. All of us are somewhere on that. It's not only Arjuna, we are all there. Then Sankhya and so on, and most of all. So when that dissatisfaction of Arjuna becomes very strong, then one gets into Sankhya. Blessings come by themselves. It's the 18 chapters of the Gita, if you play golf and if you are doing complete it, there are 18 holes. Not the 19th, which is the watering hole.
So we just happened to see the 40th chapter of your biography where you met personally. Can you explain something and he gave you some rupees?
I think you better to read it.
Yeah, but good to hear from you.
No, there's nothing. Whatever I have written in my book is what I feel. There is nothing to hide. I believe because of my personal experience that it is a living being. That much I can tell. So don't think that you are going there and somebody is dead long ago. You are going around the Gurusthana and going down the Samadhi. I don't agree with this. I think such a being is very much there even today. This is my personal experience. No, nobody can disprove myself. I mean, you can say that, but I cannot agree with it. Suppose you shake hands with me and somebody else says that this guy doesn't exist. What do I do? No, I can't. Of course, they can say, oh, you are under some anesthesia, you didn't know. That is all right. Fine, maybe I was in some. I am happy with that anesthesia, but nobody can say that. So for me, it is true, and therefore, from this, what I have to tell you is, when you go to a place like that, please think. Don't do any nonsense. Think that somebody is actually there watching you. Carefully, lead that life. Don't go for a picnic to this thing. It's not the right thing. I have honestly the same kind of presence I have felt also in Akkalkot. I have not written much about it, but thought I will. Some sequel is coming up. Perhaps we can do on that. In Akkalkot also, if you go to the Vatavriksha where he used to live, the presence is very much there. It's not gone anywhere. You see? So these great beings are not, they don't end when the physical body ends. They are there for a purpose and they will be there as long as they want. Nobody can dictate. So consider such places as sacred.
Shriya, we've all incarnated on this particular existence to learn various lessons in life. This is from what I've gathered from my spiritual journey. And I'm certain all of us have had countless incarnations where we've learned all sorts of lessons and have had amazing experiences. If that's the case, how come we all go through a stage of amnesia when we are born and we forget all of our previous experiences? Why can't we have retained the memories of our previous lifetimes in which we can retain all those lessons so that we can develop them further? And and there's always the edge that because we forget things from our previous lifetime, we can still commit the same mistakes that we did in our previous lifetime because we cannot remember our previous lessons. So why do we forget?
I cannot answer the why to it, but the fact is it is so. I can only say that we are probably, some kind of surgery is being performed on us which requires general anesthesia. And it is not fun, I'm saying seriously, because your question is very serious, I understand. Consider that we are under some kind of a general anesthesia which is required in our stage of evolution at the moment. Some have evolved out of it, of course. And certain surgeries have to be performed before we come out of it and are able to face the consequences of these memories. Which is why Sri Krishna in the Gita says, I am the one who gives you memory and I am also the one who wipes it out. Because in a certain stage of evolution in which generally people are today, in general, it is required that one progresses without remembering these. It's not strictly true that we don't remember. Many of our traits that we have in this life are based on our past. That's why we are all different. Individually, we are all different because we have something. But we are not sure exactly what it is. We can say, yeah, why am I going to, there is something with me which is different from somebody else. I have not been able to pinpoint it. That pinpointing will come only when the brain has evolved the next step. Till then, the preparations are being made, and during the preparation, it is better that these memories do not interfere. You see, think of our life. We are talking about past birth. In this life itself, there are so many memories which we would rather forget than carry on. Imagine the burden of a million lives. You see, I am just giving you food for thought. I know that this is not a typical answer for a typical question. You have to evolve the answer out for yourself now. I am just giving you some guidelines to look into this matter so that the answer becomes your answer, not my answer. Ready-made is not. This is the spiritual journey. And I am actually very glad that you are looking into this matter. How many people are going around without even looking at these things? Why? Because just as the human being evolves into the Homo sapien, and has continued for some years, the next step of evolution is due. And when that happens, many more people, now few people have little understanding of these matters, a little understanding. It's all ordered to have the complete understanding. As the mind evolves, I think things will become clearer and clearer, and people begin to, a larger number of people will begin to understand these matters.
So then my second question is, Hinduism and most other religions categorize God as all powerful, all knowing, all compassionate. You can't be all compassionate with something. Right?
Okay.
My question is,
Aha. Yeah. Now if you are become such a terrible fellow, you are not. Suppose you have become a terrible fellow, and if your parents say that we don't want to do anything about it, you do something about it. Suppose I twist your ear and there is pain. Would you consider that as that I have no compassion? Or
if God is all compassionate, why is He allowed you to become the antagonist?
God does not allow anybody. See, look, we have a mind. We have been given a mind. We have been given the circumstances, and we are allowed to do what we want. We are given freedom. If God was a dictator, God or whatever you want to call it, then everything will be in order. And how we hate dictatorship. We want to expand by ourselves, so we have been given freedom to work. Now we have to follow guidelines and try to not misuse our freedom and do it under certain conditions without causing harm. Now, whenever pain and sorrow come, it's not because of the lack of compassion, it's because of compassion. Please understand. Then only can we move forward. Otherwise, it's like spoiling a child by always indulging. One has to go. And then when you have doubts, then there are people with whom you can discuss. You always find me, no? Then why?
I just have a problem with the character.
One gentleman sitting here has a question. He says that while doing japa sadhana, let's say Omkar sadhana, one Omkar fades, and following the next Omkar, which has not yet started, there is a typical gap between the two, which is like absolute silence. How do we experience that absolute silence?
If you have, only if you have touched it can you say that there is this absolute silence. You don't have, there is no how to it. There is no how to it. It's actually, you see, that point when one has gone and the other has not yet come up, that is the ground of our consciousness actually. It is the essence of our consciousness. You cannot even be deliberately aware of it. It comes. When it comes, it comes. You cannot hold on to it. But it's the most important thing. It is that silence between the two that is the ground from which all thought arises. In fact, it is not only Omkar, even the thought process. When I have a thought, we think that we are continuously thinking like a chain. Actually, it's always one thought following another. The mind cannot think of two things at one time. It can only think of one thing at one time. But the next thing comes so fast that we think that both are linked together. It's like the frame of a film. They're all individual frames, but when they are run at a particular speed, you think it is all one continuous chain. But actually there are two frames. In the same way, between each thought there is a gap, but it is so infinitesimally small that we cannot grasp it. If by some chance you feel it, then you're fortunate. That's all I can say. If you said there is no way you can artificially hold on to it or expand it or allow it, there is no way. When you feel it, enjoy it. That's all I can say. And you don't even think of chanting Om again. As long as then when it has subsided, then you can start your chanting again. Because the aim of chanting is not to chant, but to bring about silence. One need not mistake the goal, the technique to be the goal. If the goal is felt, it is stop all chanting and subside into it in quietness and enjoy it to the best of your capacity. That's all. Did you see that? Give that question? Or?
No.
No. Sounded like your question.
No, there's not.
Okay. So I think now we can stop. I'm sorry, little bit not bouncy enough. Tomorrow I will be better, I think.